Then I've been streaming Infamous, the duology. So I'm gonna give my updated thoughts on that because I'm honestly surprised that my opinion on these games has slightly changed, especially for Infamous one. So I'm gonna start with the good. Obviously, the story is still like really really good for Infamous one. Like despite me obviously like knowing how like the story's gonna end and things like that, but like the ending for Infamous one just makes it all super memorable and like wraps everything up nicely. And like that's an aspect of like the game that I didn't really expect going into it, because I was like, oh, like things are happening, I'm good guy, he's bad guy, or like I could be bad guy but he's also the badder guy sort of thing, because this is around that era where like games were like, hey, you could have a choice, you could be the good guy or the bad guy, and like Infamous was like one of like the sort of like forefronts of like those games where like you could be good or you could be evil. But this game, my playthrough, I always do like the good side, and I only do the bad side for like, just for like so I could see what the other side was. But going back to it, the story, like I said, really 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 good. Now let's get to the bad, which is almost like everything else, unfortunately. So obviously this is their first like Infamous game, their first like big open world game, so like there's like a lot of like growing pains in it. The game definitely feels like the first Infamous game. So when you play the other Infamous games from here on out, they only get better, especially in gameplay. The clunky controls, like climbing up buildings and like going on things. Like there was a point during my stream where I was like, it was like literally the last part of the game. You like climb like this big like junk tower, and like there's a part where I was like struggling to like climb up, and I was like, why is Cole not grabbing this stupid pole? I was getting super mad and like really really like tilted, and I was like, I can't, like I honestly can't. And like since I would fall, it would like restart me from like where I started, and I was like, okay, but I obviously eventually got it, but that shit was just, oh my god. Obviously better upgrades as the game progresses, but some of the upgrades, like where you like hover as Cole to like go from like building to building, I feel like should have been a really early upgrade, because like getting it like, I think it was like almost halfway through the game, did not feel good like at all. I was like, why am I getting this halfway through the game? I probably should have gotten this earlier, because most of the time I would not be, especially in the beginning parts of the game where I'm talking about this, I would for the most part not climb buildings, because climbing the buildings would take longer than just going on foot. Because if I climbed the building and I don't have the hover thing, I would literally just fall back down and just have to run, and I'm like, I might as well just run on the streets anyway. So knockback and no invincibility frames during combat is really frustrating.
Yeah,
so,
I remember that.
oh my god, that shit was so annoying, man. Like I would get hit by one thing and then I just die, and I'm like, all right, I guess I'm dead. I'm restarting from the last checkpoint, whatever. Like I would honestly like instantly just like accept it. Like, all right, I died. Let's just go next. Like I honestly do not care. The graphics, oh my god. I know it's a early PS3 game, but the graphics look like fucking shit. Like the game is
very gray.
Yeah, the game is already like super gray, but like the graphics, like they don't look refined or anything at all. And like 100%, like when I was streaming Infamous 2, someone came into my chat and was like, I think that like we should have gotten like a remaster or a remake for like the PS4 and PS5. And I was like, that's probably a good idea, because like Infamous 1 looks like garbage, and like it could probably benefit from the amount of like time that like the series has taken, especially for the gameplay as well. And like the story, you don't gotta change anything about that, because the story is still really really good. It's literally just the gameplay, which does get a little bit better in Infamous 2, which I will get into in just a second. But like the graphics, like oh my god, the game just does not look good to look at. But going on to Infamous 2, I say that this is one of my favorite games on the PlayStation 3, and it still is. It's honestly like within like my top 5, maybe top 3. I'm not entirely sure. But Infamous 2, so melee combat in the first game was honestly dog shit, and it was not worth doing unless you were like just having fun with it. And you're like, this is like the last enemy, I guess I'll like punch him a couple times. But Infamous 2, they introduced the amp, which makes combat feel a lot better, but not as good as I've been praising it all of these years. Sometimes I'll like randomly like miss melee attacks. Maybe that's just me being bad at the game now or whatever, but the amp feels a little bit better than just like punching dudes. But the combo system, where like if you like hit an enemy a certain amount of times, like this bar will fill up, and then you hit triangle, and then it does like a sort of like super movement in like Spider-Man PS4 or something like that, where like you just do like this animation and then that enemy dies. It is definitely fun to watch and pull off. Upgrading abilities and moves is a lot better in this game. In Infamous 1, since you would get experience for like everything you did, like killing enemies, completing missions, side missions, things like that, you would have like a abundant amount of experience where like you could literally save for like this like tier 3 upgrade that you wanted and like not like be that affected within the gameplay. In this game, you have to do like a certain like challenge thing where like you have to get like 5 headshots in order to like upgrade, in order to unlock this ability, in order to unlock it with your experience, if that makes any sense. So like you have to do like this like sort of like little side mission before you can even get that upgrade, which was like a little bit more like rewarding to finally get. And like the upgrades themselves feel a lot better. And like certain moves are like just like, so the hover ability, I forgot that they did this. The hover ability, they actually get an upgrade when you play like these story missions where the hover just makes you go higher first. So it's sort of like a double jump in a way.
Yeah.
Which like I was like, oh shit, like that. I forgot this was in the game, and I was like, this is really really good. And then on top of that, if you do the good storyline, there's like this ice pillar that you'll get, which will like launch you up. And then when you have that second hover thing, like traveling just makes is now just so much fun. And also like the world itself, New Marais, the level design is just much much better for Cole to like climb up buildings and things like that. There's now like these poles where you literally just climb on it and then you shoot up to the almost top of the building most of the time, and that just felt really really good. Like they just made like the gameplay just much much better to like explore and roam around and things like that, and that's just, you know, always good. But yeah, you know, graphics are obviously better. The story itself is probably on par with Infamous 1. I would say the ending for Infamous 1 is still just like mind-blowing, like what the hell just happened sort of thing. But Infamous 2 story is still pretty good, especially the good ending, the evil ending. I was just like, man, I really did that. Like, what the fuck? But the good ending is definitely a good like send-off to Cole McGrath's story, I will say. But that's all I've been doing for this week. Let's get